The residents of Maplewood Heights were used to order, neatly trimmed hedges, precisely timed sprinklers, identical porch furniture. Anything less than perfect was unacceptable, and nobody enforced that standard more obsessively than Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. Tall, tightly wound, and always clutching a clipboard, she ruled the neighborhood like a suburban monarch with a rulebook instead of a crown. So when a man in worn jeans and a gray hoodie started appearing around the complex, he didn't go unnoticed. He arrived early, before sunrise, walking the perimeter with a flashlight, inspecting fences and stairwells. Sometimes he had tools slung over his shoulder. Other times he just stood, staring at the foundations of buildings like he was solving a puzzle only he could see. Karen was on him immediately. "Excuse me," she barked the first morning, marching across the lawn in heels that stabbed the soil with every step. "Can I help you? Are you a contractor? You didn't check in at the HOA office." The man turned. His eyes were calm, tired, but not intimidated. "Morning," he said with a polite nod. "Just doing some checks." "Checks for who?" Karen demanded. "You need permission to be on this property." He pulled a folded work order from his back pocket, holding it out to her. Karen didn't take it. She just squinted. "Maintenance," she scoffed. "This doesn't even have a company name on it. Do you even work here, or are you just wandering around pretending to?" "I'm Daniel," he said simply. "I've got approvals. I'll be in and out." Karen didn't like that answer. He didn't fumble. He didn't apologize. He didn't even explain himself. Worst of all, he smiled. Something about that smile unnerved her. It wasn't smug. It wasn't mocking. It was patient. "I'm the HOA president," she snapped. "If you're not listed in our vendor database, you'll need to leave. Now." Daniel just looked at her clipboard. "Nice layout. Very organized," he said, and walked past her toward the utility shed like she hadn't just tried to eject him. Karen stood frozen, stunned. No one ever brushed her off like that. Ever. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of him, zooming in on his license plate, his tool belt, even his shoes. She was already drafting an email to the HOA board. But Daniel didn't react. He knelt down near the air conditioning unit and scribbled something into a little leather notebook. The next day he was back, and the next. Each time, he appeared a little earlier, checked a new corner of the complex, sometimes disappearing into maintenance rooms that should have been locked. Karen began obsessing over him. She even began driving the loop at night, hoping to catch him off guard. The residents started whispering. Some thought he was an inspector. Others wondered if he was secretly with the city, doing safety audits. One older woman swore he was a building inspector from the county. "Those types don't wear uniforms," she said. But Karen wasn't interested in rumors. She was interested in control. And this man, this Daniel, was the first thing in years she couldn't control. So she made a decision. She would expose him, no matter who he worked for, no matter what it took. What she didn't know was that Daniel wasn't hiding anything. He was watching. Karen Whitmore didn't sleep well that night. She kept replaying the interaction in her head. Daniel's calm face, that unnerving smile, and worst of all, his refusal to acknowledge her authority. In her world, people like Daniel either apologized or disappeared. He did neither. The next morning, she was out earlier than usual, coffee in one hand, binoculars in the other. And there he was again. Daniel stood beneath Building C, kneeling near a gas line, quietly taking photos with an old-looking camera. He wasn't wearing a company uniform. No logo, no ID badge, nothing official at all. Just those same jeans, the same hoodie, and that same maddening composure. Karen wasn't going to stand by this time. She marched up, recording him with her phone. "What exactly do you think you're doing now?" she asked, voice louder than necessary. Daniel looked up slowly. "There's a hairline crack in this joint," he said, tapping the pipe. "Not urgent, but it'll be a problem in 6 months if it's not reinforced." Karen blinked. "You're not a licensed plumber. You're trespassing." He pulled out another slip of paper. This one stamped. "Signed authorization," he said simply. "Management company sent it over." Karen snatched it from his hand. It was real. It even had the HOA's contractor codes listed. Still, she sneered. "You're not from the list I approved." Daniel stood up. "Then maybe your list is out of date." And with that, he walked off again. Not hurried, not smug, just quiet, still. It drove her crazy. Over the next few days, Karen turned surveillance into her full-time job. She installed a motion camera near the clubhouse and aimed it right where Daniel parked. She had a retired neighbor walk his dog during Daniel's rounds to listen for anything suspicious. She even bribed a teenager to accidentally follow him and peek at his notes. And every time, nothing. No shady behavior, no phone calls, no suspicious meetings. Just Daniel, inspecting the property like it was his job, and sometimes like it was his obsession. Then came the moment that broke her. On a rainy Thursday morning, Karen was reviewing camera footage when she froze. There, clear as day, was Daniel using a master key to unlock the gated electrical room. Not the janitor's closet, not the mailboxes, the locked facility only the building engineers and owners had access to. Her eyes widened. Nope, no one gave him that. She drove to the room within minutes, heart pounding. The door was locked again, but dry footprints led from the threshold. She knocked hard. No answer. Then she tried the knob. Locked. She called the building maintenance number. "Did one of you give this Daniel guy a master key?" The person on the other end hesitated. "We were told to comply with him. He's cleared through ownership." "Ownership of what?" she snapped. "Of the, never mind, ma'am. I'll have to get back to you." Karen hung up, jaw clenched. That was it. She didn't care what papers he had, or who supposedly cleared him. As far as she was concerned, Daniel was violating policy, disrespecting the board, and undermining her authority. She opened her email app and began typing furiously. Subject: Unauthorized contractor. Public dismissal request. I'm requesting a full public meeting this Saturday. I will expose this man's conduct, revoke his access, and make an example. We must maintain order and protocol. She hit send with a satisfied sigh. This time, she'd do it publicly. She'd humiliate him in front of every resident. And then, finally, she'd be rid of him. What she didn't know was that Daniel had already read the email, because Daniel had access to everything. The Saturday morning sun glared down on Maplewood Heights, where Karen had meticulously arranged folding chairs in the common area near the pool. She printed flyers the night before and slipped them under every door. HOA emergency meeting. Urgent issues to be addressed. Security breach, policy violations, and a contractor impersonator. By 10:00 a.m., over 24 residents had gathered, sipping coffee and murmuring among themselves. Nobody knew what this was about. But when Karen held a microphone, something was always going down. She wore her finest pantsuit and stood next to a tri-fold display board filled with blurry screenshots and enlarged evidence of Daniel's so-called violations. She tapped the mic. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she began, her voice sharp and theatrical. "This meeting concerns the unauthorized activities of one man, whose presence here has jeopardized the structure, safety, and sanctity of our neighborhood." Daniel walked in right on cue. He stood calmly at the back. No clipboard, no tools, just a black t-shirt and a bottle of water. No reaction, just watching. Karen's eyes narrowed, but she continued. "Over the past 2 weeks," she said, flipping to a blown-up photo of Daniel inspecting a rooftop vent, "this individual has crept around our homes without formal board approval. He has accessed restricted rooms, refused to provide credentials, and," she jabbed the board, "has disrespected me, your elected president." She raised her voice now, addressing Daniel directly. "You are not on the HOA's contractor list. You were never granted full access. Your behavior is unacceptable. Therefore, you're fired, effective immediately." Gasps spread across the group. Some turned to Daniel, expecting him to object, argue, fight back. But Daniel didn't move. He took a long sip of water, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and said, "Okay. That was it. No defense. No protest. Just, okay. Karen faltered for a split second, not expecting that. Okay, she repeated. Daniel nodded. If that's what you've decided, I'll finish packing up. He started to turn away. No, you don't finish anything. Karen snapped. You're done. If you're not off the property in 15 minutes, I'm calling the police. Daniel paused, turned his head slightly, as if to say something. But he just smiled, that same maddening, knowing smile, and walked off without another word. Karen turned back to the crowd with a victorious grin. That's how you handle unauthorized personnel, she said. With structure, with authority. But the crowd wasn't clapping. They looked confused, uncomfortable. A few even whispered among themselves. Karen ignored it and dismissed the meeting. Problem solved, she said, folding up her poster board. But the problem wasn't solved. In fact, the real problem was just beginning. Because what Karen didn't know was that Daniel never worked for her. He was never under her authority. And the person she had just humiliated in public, he wasn't the building's handyman. He was its owner. Karen spent the rest of her Saturday basking in self-satisfaction. She'd strutted through Maplewood Heights like she'd just defended the kingdom from invasion. Her phone buzzed with messages from HOA members, some congratulating her, others still unsure what just happened. He was a weirdo anyway, one neighbor texted. You did the right thing, said another. But Sunday morning, everything changed. At precisely 8:03 am, an email hit every inbox in the HOA directory. The subject line read, Notice of Management Reorganization, effective immediately. Karen's stomach flipped before she even opened it. The message was brief, written in professional, unshakable language. Dear residents of Maplewood Heights, as of May 1st, full ownership of buildings AD and surrounding facilities has officially transferred to D. Reeve Holdings, represented by Mr. Daniel Reeve. All structural inspections and upgrades conducted over the past month were personally overseen and funded by Mr. Reeve, acting in full legal authority. We thank you for your cooperation during this transition. Frontier Property Management Group. Karen stared at the screen. D. Reeve. Daniel Reeve. Owner. Her throat tightened. She hadn't just embarrassed a contractor. She'd humiliated the new owner of the entire property in front of 24 residents with a microphone and printed flyers. She called the HOA vice president. Doug, did you see the email? This has to be a mistake. The board wasn't informed of any ownership transfer. Doug sounded dazed. Karen, I think it's real. I just got a call from Frontier Management. They're confirming it. But I fired him publicly, she snapped. Doug sighed. Then you might want to apologize. Now. She hung up. Outside, Daniel was back. No tool belt, no hoodie, no clipboard. He wore a black blazer over that same plain t-shirt, sunglasses perched on his head, chatting casually with the building security chief. His posture was relaxed, but his presence had changed. He looked like someone who belonged here. He looked like someone who owned the ground he stood on. Karen stormed out of her unit, walking straight toward him. Mr. Reeve, she said, trying to sound poised. There must be some misunderstanding. Daniel turned slowly, calm as ever. No misunderstanding, he said. I bought the property. Karen blinked. When? A month ago. She laughed nervously. Why didn't you say anything? I didn't need to, he said, hands in his pockets. I had all the access I required. I was assessing the damage, the plumbing, structural concerns. Figured I'd fix the problems quietly first, before making a formal entrance. Her voice sharpened. You let me fire you in public. He tilted his head slightly. You weren't firing me. You don't have the authority. I let you think you did. The words hit like a slap. And what now? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. You planning to make changes? Evictions? Daniel's eyes studied her, calm, unreadable. We'll see, he said. But I believe in standards, just not hypocrisy. With that, he walked past her. Karen stood frozen, heart thudding. For the first time in years, she felt small in her own kingdom. Residents peeked through blinds. Some stood outside pretending to water plants, watching. Whispers started, and somewhere deep down, Karen realized she wasn't in control anymore. Karen Whitmore was not used to being irrelevant, but that's exactly what it felt like now. Since the announcement of Daniel Reeves' ownership, her phone had gone silent. No calls from the board, no messages asking for her input, no complaints to mediate or violations to enforce. She was still technically HOA president on paper, but in practice, no one was listening anymore. Worse, Daniel didn't remove her. He didn't fire her. He didn't confront her in public or humiliate her back. He did something much worse. He ignored her. And while he remained silent, the neighborhood began to change. Within days, workers rolled in with trucks bearing Daniel's company logo, Reeve Urban Group. They weren't flashy, but they were efficient. Sidewalk cracks were repaired, overgrown hedges trimmed with laser precision, broken stair rails fixed within hours. Residents were stunned. One morning, Mrs. Patel from Building C stepped outside and found her mailbox had been replaced. Brand new, no rust, with her name stenciled neatly in gold. "That man is a miracle," she whispered. Even Doug, the HOA vice president, started praising Daniel during casual strolls. "Never seen improvements happen this fast. He's got real resources." Karen stewed. "He's buying everyone." Doug raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe he's just better at this than you were." That was the final straw. Karen locked herself in her office and pulled out her secret weapon, the violation archive. For years, she collected minor infractions: plants too tall, fences painted the wrong shade, wind chimes deemed excessive. She had records on everyone, including Daniel. She spent the night printing violation notices, dozens of them, all directed at him. Unauthorized parking, structural changes without permits, early morning noise disruptions, even failure to notify HOA leadership of ownership transition. She hand-delivered them the next morning, stuffing each envelope into Daniel's mailbox. Then she waited. Hours passed. Nothing. The next day, still no response. But then on Monday, a formal envelope slid under her door. Inside, a letter from Frontier Property Management. It was written in cool, clinical language. "Effective immediately, all HOA enforcement actions must be approved by the current property owner or their designated representative. Unilateral issuance of violation notices without proper review constitutes a breach of procedural policy. Further unauthorized action will result in removal from board leadership. FPMG Legal Division." Karen crumpled the letter with shaking hands. He wasn't just ignoring her. He was outplaying her. The next few days were torture. Residents smiled more. They waved at Daniel when he passed. The man who once crept through shadows now strolled with the confidence of a king. Karen felt invisible in her own neighborhood. But Karen Whitmore never surrendered. If Daniel was playing the long game, so would she. She'd find his weakness, dig into his past. There had to be something, anything, that could shatter his spotless image. So she began the only way she knew how, by breaking the rules she once enforced. Karen Whitmore had always trusted one thing more than people: paperwork. People lied. Paper trails didn't. If Daniel Reeve thought he could waltz into her neighborhood, seize control, and parade around like some mystery messiah, then he clearly didn't know who he was dealing with. She wasn't just the HOA president. She was a bloodhound with a printer and a grudge. By Tuesday, her home office looked like a detective's den. Manila folders, printed deeds, property transfer documents, everything she could dig up from public records. But the deeper she looked, the more frustrated she became. Daniel Reeve was clean. Too clean. He had no social media, no LinkedIn, no real online footprint at all. His company, Reeve Urban Group, was registered in Nevada, shielded under layers of LLCs and shell companies. The Maplewood Heights purchase, technically executed through a third-party firm based out of Chicago. It was like he planned to be untraceable. She finally found a property tax record from 5 years back. Daniel had bought and flipped a crumbling apartment complex in Portland. It was now a thriving community with near-perfect resident reviews. She ground her teeth. Too perfect. It wasn't normal. No one was this flawless unless they were hiding something. So Karen did what any self-respecting control freak would do. She hired a private investigator. The man she called, Vince, wasn't cheap, but he was effective. Ex-police, gray mustache, voice like gravel. I need everything, Karen told him. Background, work history, skeletons. I want to know what he's hiding. Vince just nodded. Everyone's got a shadow. Give me 3 days. But Karen didn't want to wait 3 days. That night, long after dark, she snuck across the courtyard with a flashlight tucked under her coat. Daniel's unit was on the top floor of Building A, Unit 304. She wasn't breaking in, technically. She was just peeking. The hallway was quiet. No cameras. She reached his door, heart thudding. She leaned in. Silence. Then she noticed something strange. A faint glow seeping from beneath the door. Not the warm yellow of a lamp. It was cool blue, flickering like a screen. She pressed her ear against the wood. Muffled voices. Audio loops. Not a TV. More like a series of recordings. She couldn't make out the words, but there was something robotic about them. Repeated phrases, almost like surveillance takes. She stumbled back, pulse racing. Why would Daniel be listening to surveillance tapes? Who was he watching? Suddenly, the doorknob turned. Karen bolted, ducking around the corner just as the door creaked open. She peeked. Daniel stepped out slowly, wearing earbuds, phone in hand. He didn't see her. He just stood there for a moment, looked both ways, then went back inside. She waited a full minute before retreating to her unit, breath shallow. He was listening to takes of someone. And he looked around before stepping out, like he expected someone to be there. Her paranoia skyrocketed. Was he watching her? Her phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m. A message from Vince, earlier than expected. Did some digging. You're right, he's hiding something. And it's big. Not criminal, but strange. This guy, he's not just some investor. You'll want to see this in person. Karen sat frozen. Daniel Reeve had secrets. And finally, she had a crack in his perfect shell. Karen's mind raced as she stared at Vince's message. What was Daniel hiding? Was it something dangerous? Something that could bring the whole neighborhood crashing down? That evening, she summoned the courage to confront him. She found Daniel standing by the community garden, speaking quietly with a group of residents. His calm, confident demeanor unsettled her, but she swallowed her nerves and stepped forward. Mr. Reeve, she began, voice steady but firm. We need to talk. Daniel turned, surprise flickering in his eyes. Of course, Karen. What's on your mind? She didn't waste a second. I know you're watching surveillance tapes. You're monitoring someone. Why? Who? His expression didn't change, but there was a new intensity in his gaze. I'm protecting this community, he said simply. There are forces at play you don't understand. Karen bristled. Forces? What are you talking about? Daniel's voice lowered. This building has a history. It's been targeted before. Fraud, corruption, even worse. I'm making sure that doesn't happen again. By spying on us? Karen shot back. It's not spying, Daniel corrected. It's vigilance. I'm here to keep everyone safe, even if it means uncomfortable truths. Karen's frustration boiled over. You've taken over, and no one knows who you really are. What else are you hiding? Daniel smiled faintly, like someone amused by a child's tantrum. Nothing but the future of Maplewood Heights, he said. But if you want the truth, come inside. I'll show you. Reluctantly, Karen followed him into his unit. Inside, the room was stark and minimalist. Screens lined one wall, displaying live camera feeds from every corner of the property. It was like a fortress command center. This, Daniel said, is how I ensure safety and transparency. Everyone here has something to hide, whether they know it or not. Karen scanned the screens, her heart pounding. Faces of neighbors, moments of daily life, nothing sinister. Then what are you really after? She demanded. Daniel turned to her, eyes steady. Control, he admitted. Not over you, but over chaos. Over neglect. I bought this property because I saw potential and danger. I'm not here to play HOA politics. I'm here to protect an investment and a community. Karen felt the weight of his words. Her fight to maintain authority felt small compared to the stakes Daniel laid out. But she wasn't done. If you're so concerned about safety, why not be honest? Why all the secrecy? Daniel sighed. Because trust takes time. Actions speak louder than words. Karen realized something. The man she thought was an enemy might actually be the only one capable of saving their home. But could she accept it? Could she let go of her pride? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed with another message from Vince. Karen, you need to come to the address I sent you. It's urgent. It's about Daniel. Her heart pounded as she left Daniel's apartment, caught between suspicion and a growing, uneasy respect. The game was far from over, and the real truth was yet to come. Karen's hands trembled as she stepped into the dimly lit cafe Vince had arranged for their meeting. The private investigator sat in the corner booth, his gravelly voice low and urgent. I found something, Vince said without preamble. Not just about Daniel Reeve, but about the entire ownership transfer. Karen leaned in. Tell me. Vince slid a folder across the table. Daniel's not just an investor or a property owner. He's part of a larger organization, a real estate watchdog group that buys troubled properties to protect them from criminal syndicates and corrupt boards. Karen blinked. Why would someone need to do that? Because, Vince continued, Maplewood Heights was a target. The previous owners were involved in shady deals, money laundering, and using the HOA to launder funds. Daniel's group swooped into Keene House, quietly and thoroughly. Karen's mind raced. Everything made sense now. The secrecy, the surveillance, the swift repairs. Vince continued. That email you got? The one announcing the ownership. It was more than just a notice. It was a warning. Daniel's not just here to renovate. He's here to stop a deeper rot. Karen sat back, stunned. So all this time, I was fighting the wrong battle. Vince nodded. You were fighting the symptom, not the disease. Suddenly, Karen's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video message from Daniel. Her pulse quickened as she watched. Karen, Daniel's voice was calm and sincere. I know we started on the wrong foot. I understand why you fought me. But I need your help. This community needs strong leadership that can balance oversight with protection. I don't want to erase your role. I want us to work together. Karen wiped a tear. For the first time, she saw Daniel not as an adversary, but as an ally. The next morning, at the HOA meeting, Karen stood beside Daniel. She spoke honestly about the past month, the mistakes, the revelations, the lessons. The residents listened, captivated. When she finished, Daniel took the floor, promising transparency, safety, and collaboration. Maplewood Heights had a new beginning. And Karen, she wasn't just the HOA president anymore. She was part of a team that would protect and nurture the community for years to come.